Back in Britain, looking expensive didn't always mean being expensive. Some cars had the styling, the comfort, and even the presence of much more expensive machinery. Yet ordinary British families could still dream of owning one. These were the cars that made your neighbours think you'd spent a fortune, even when you hadn't. And some of them became surprisingly affordable ways to enjoy a little bit of luxury. Here are 10 British cars that looked expensive, but ordinary families could actually afford. Number 10, Rover 2000, 1963. When the Rover 2000, 1963, arrived, it looked like a car designed for people with serious money. The clean styling, the elegant interior, and the smooth, comfortable ride gave it a distinctly upmarket image. But Rover wanted something different. The 2000 was designed to compete with expensive European saloons, while still being realistic for ordinary British buyers. It wasn't cheap, but compared with the luxury cars it was challenging. It offered an impressive amount of sophistication for the money. And there was something else that made it special. It didn't need a huge engine to feel expensive. The 4-cylinder engine was refined. The suspension was advanced. And the whole car felt remarkably modern. For a British family wanting something more prestigious than an ordinary Ford or Austin, the Rover 2000 was a tempting choice. It gave you the feeling of moving up in the world, without necessarily needing a millionaire's bank account. But the next car took that idea even further, because it looked like a miniature luxury car. Yet thousands of ordinary British families could actually afford one. Number 9, Triumph Dolomite, 1972. The Triumph Dolomite, 1972, had something many family cars simply didn't. Style. From the outside, it looked smart, elegant, and considerably more expensive than it actually was. Inside, there was a comfortable cabin, a well-equipped dashboard, and a feeling that Triumph had tried to give ordinary motorists something special. For families who didn't want a basic runabout, the Dolomite offered a more sophisticated alternative. And then came the Sprint, with its powerful 16-valve engine. The Dolomite suddenly had genuine performance credentials too. That meant you could have a car that looked classy during the week, and was genuinely exciting to drive at the weekend. For many British motorists, that combination was hard to resist. But there was another car waiting to prove that you didn't need a huge luxury saloon to make your neighbours think you'd made it. Number 8, Vauxhall Cavalier, 1975. When the Vauxhall Cavalier, 1975, arrived, it immediately looked like a serious executive car. The sharp styling, long bonnet, and spacious interior gave it a much more expensive appearance than its price suggested. For British families, that was a big attraction. You could have something that looked smart outside the office, but still worked perfectly well as a family car. The Cavalier was practical, comfortable, and available in several versions. It became particularly popular with company drivers, but private buyers loved it too. And because it was a mainstream car, parts and servicing were much easier to manage than with a genuinely exotic luxury machine. The result? A car that could give you the appearance of success, without requiring the bank balance of a successful businessman. And that's exactly why the Cavalier became such an important part of British motoring. Number 7, Austin Princess, 1975. When the Austin Princess, 1975, appeared, it looked far more expensive than the badge suggested. Its long, formal shape, large glass area, and spacious interior gave it the presence of a proper executive car. For an ordinary British family, that was part of the appeal. You could arrive somewhere in a Princess, and it certainly didn't look like you'd bought the cheapest car in the showroom. Inside, there was plenty of space for passengers, a comfortable ride, and a surprisingly luxurious atmosphere in the higher spec versions. It wasn't perfect, Reliability and build quality could cause frustration. But when it was working properly, the Princess offered an enormous amount of car for the money. It was the sort of vehicle that allowed an ordinary buyer to experience a little taste of executive motoring. But the next car made that idea even more convincing. Number 6, Ford Granada, 1972. The Ford Granada, 1972, was a big deal in Britain. It looked like the sort of car normally driven by wealthy businessmen. But it was actually available to ordinary buyers. The long body, large cabin, and comfortable interior gave it serious road presence. For company drivers, families, and professionals, the Granada became an attractive way to move into a larger, more prestigious car. And Ford gave buyers plenty of equipment. Higher specification versions could feel genuinely luxurious. There was also plenty of performance available. So you weren't simply buying something big and comfortable. You could have a car that was genuinely quick as well. For many British motorists, a Granada was the closest they could get to executive-class motoring without paying executive car money. And then came a British car that looked even more sophisticated, while quietly offering one of the smartest interiors of its time. Number 5, Rover SD1, 1976. When the Rover SD1, 1976, arrived, it didn't look like a traditional British saloon. The fastback shape, sharp nose, large glass tailgate, and futuristic interior made it look incredibly modern. Park one next to an ordinary family car, and the SD1 immediately looked like it belonged to another class. Yet Rover wanted ordinary buyers to experience that sense of sophistication. It was practical enough for family life, comfortable enough for long journeys, and powerful versions offered serious performance. The famous V8 versions were especially desirable. You could carry the family, travel across Britain, and still have a car that felt genuinely special behind the wheel. That combination made the SD1 one of the most interesting British cars of its era. It looked expensive. It felt expensive. But compared with many luxury alternatives, it could be surprisingly attainable. And there were still 4 cars left that could make an ordinary driveway look considerably more expensive than it really was. The SD1 proved that affordable prestige could also come with practicality, while the final 4 cars pushed that formula even further through distinctive styling and near-luxury presence. Number 4, Jaguar XJ6, 1968. When the Jaguar XJ6, 1968, arrived, it looked like a car for the wealthy. Long bonnet, elegant lines, beautiful interior, and that unmistakable Jaguar presence. But Jaguar had something important in mind. The XJ6 was designed to offer luxury and performance at a price that undercut many of its expensive European rivals. That made it incredibly tempting. For a successful British worker, a Jaguar suddenly didn't seem completely impossible. The interior felt special. The ride was wonderfully comfortable. And the engine gave it the effortless performance people associated with much more expensive cars. Of course, running a Jaguar still wasn't cheap. Fuel, insurance, and maintenance could all add up. But compared with the cars it was competing against, the XJ6 offered astonishing value. For many families, it was the dream of owning a proper Jaguar, without quite paying Rolls-Royce money. But the next car was even more unusual, because it could make an ordinary family feel like they had bought something genuinely luxurious. Number 3, Daimler Sovereign, 1966. The Daimler Sovereign, 1966, had one major advantage. It looked expensive, because it was associated with expensive motoring. But underneath, it shared much of its engineering with Jaguar. That meant buyers could enjoy elegant styling, a refined interior, an impressive performance, without necessarily paying the price of Britain's most exclusive luxury cars. Inside, there was plenty of leather, wood, and that old-fashioned sense of occasion. It wasn't the sort of car you'd buy simply to get from A to B. It was designed to make the journey feel special. For ordinary motorists who had always dreamed of owning something luxurious, a used Daimler could eventually become a realistic possibility. And that was the magic. You didn't necessarily need to be rich forever. You just needed to wait until the right used example came along. But one car still remains. And this final machine proved that looking expensive didn't always require a luxury badge at all. Number 2. Triumph 2000, 1963. The Triumph 2000, 1963 was one of those cars that made people think, that's a proper motor. It had elegant styling, a comfortable interior, and enough presence to look considerably more expensive than an ordinary family saloon. Triumph positioned it as a more sophisticated alternative to basic family cars. And buyers noticed. It was comfortable enough for long journeys, practical enough for family life, and refined enough to make the driver feel like they had moved up a class. For many British motorists, that was exactly the point. You didn't necessarily need a Rolls-Royce. You just wanted something that felt special. Something you could be proud to park outside your house. And the Triumph 2000 delivered that feeling without entering the truly expensive luxury car market. But there is still one car left. And it may be the biggest surprise of the entire list. Because this final British car managed to look genuinely prestigious, while remaining within reach of far more ordinary motorists. The Triumph 2000 showed how affordable prestige could work, but the final car revealed the most surprising budget-friendly British luxury option on the list without relying on a traditional luxury badge. Number 1. Daimler Sovereign, 1966. The Daimler Sovereign, 1966, had the kind of presence that made people assume you were wealthy. Elegant styling, a beautifully finished interior, leather, wood, and that unmistakable sense of occasion. But underneath, it shared much of its engineering with Jaguar. That was important because it meant buyers could enjoy the character of a prestigious British car without entering the territory of Britain's most expensive marquess. For an ordinary British motorist, the new car price could still be a serious stretch. But as these cars became older, a used Sovereign could become surprisingly attainable. Suddenly, the dream of owning something that looked genuinely luxurious wasn't completely impossible. You could pull up outside your house, and your neighbors might assume you'd spent a fortune. They didn't necessarily know that you'd found an older example at a fraction of its original price. Of course, running an old luxury car still required money. But for someone who wanted comfort and presence, the Daimler Sovereign offered something very special. It was luxury motoring that could eventually become an ordinary man's dream within reach.